Hello again and welcome back. In our previous video we talked about using props, which are values that we pass down to a component. What's interesting about props also that I didn't mention in the last video is that if you change props, like if the values change, the component will re-render, right? So that's another key feature there, is if the props update, then the component refreshes and draws itself with the new values. So that's part of the reactive programming, okay? We don't have to specifically say that the title will change, but where we make the component here, if this value were to change, then the component itself would update and we would see the new title on the page, okay? Let's talk about state for a moment, okay? So state is a value that's held internally in a component, and when state changes, then the component refreshes, okay? It draws itself again, okay? Props come from outside. So in other words, we set the value for the prop here where the component is created, and then internally the component deconstructs or gets the value of props off of, or the value from a prop off its props object and then uses it, okay? State, on the other hand, we're going to use state for the category, right, to show the selected category, and state is held inside the component itself, right? And we can pass state down as a prop to other components too, so we can kind of mix the two together. In this case, what we want to do is we want to create some state for the app component. And the state is going to be the name of the selected category. So it'll be baby, automotive, beauty, books, home, garden, like any one of these names, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to pass that value, the selected category name, to the category list, and then that will allow the button with the matching name to change its style and show that it's selected. And we're going to pass the name down to the product list, right, so that the product list can filter the list of products that are displayed. So it can filter which products are displayed based on the category name, okay? So let's set this up. So I'm going to close this thing right there. And let's talk about the structure of our page here for a moment, right? So to understand like why we're going to arrange it this way, right, it pays to understand the structure, right? So I'm going to draw a diagram down here. So what I have is I have a div, right? So I'll put that here. This is like div app, right? I put the class name on it, okay? And then what we're going to do is I'm going to draw it like this, right? So inside div app, we have header component, and then we have category list component, and we have product list component, right? And what I want to do is I want this right here to have some state, so it'll be like selected category. Something like that, right? So it'll exist here. But that means it can be passed down to these guys. And if we think about this, our app is a little more complicated because the category list, which I misspelled there, there we go, fixed, right? The category list actually has some buttons in it, right? So there's actually a div here, dot category list, and then inside that list, there's a bunch of buttons, right? So there's like button, something like that, right? And then inside the product list, it's actually kind of the same thing, right? So we have actually have a div here called dot product list. Actually, really like this. Maybe I should rewrite it. It's kind of like this guy is really the category list div, right? And the same thing here, like this is kind of like div product list, like that, right? And then inside the product list, we have a bunch of divs, right? So there's like a div, and then inside that div, there's an H2, and then there's a paragraph. You know what I mean? I think there's something, there's a small tag too, something like that, right? I think actually there's two paragraphs because one of them is the price. So it's kind of like we have this, okay? So what we need to do is we need to, do a couple things here. We're going to store our state in div.app, and then we're going to pass it down to the category list, and the category list can use it to generate the buttons, right? And then we can pass the state down here so we can show the selected category, okay? And then it'll be a little more complicated because when you click on a button, we'll need that click to notify the div app at the top here to set the category. So I need these buttons to set the category here. It doesn't work if we set the category inside the category list because it's very difficult for us to pass values from, one child element to the child of another parent, right? So if I click here and category list is storing the state, then it's hard for me to pass it over here. It's almost impossible, right? But if we store it in a common parent or ancestor, then it's easy to share, okay? So, and sometimes you hear this idea called lifting state. So sometimes you might make a system and you put some state inside the category list, but then you realize you need to share it with a sibling, right? And what you want to do is you want to lift state out of a child component and put it in the parent, right? In the common parent for both siblings, right? So this is a child of div. This is a child of app, right? This is a child of app. So app has 2 children, 3 children really, including header, right? So sometimes your children, we want to lift their state and give it to the parent, okay? So let's give that a try now, right? So that's kind of our diagram, right? So what are we going to do? Let's start by setting up state, okay? So I'm going to make a variable up here, or I'm going to import something, right? So I'm going to do import from, and I'm going to import from React. So I'm not using the // here because this is one of the files that's in our node modules. It's not one of the files we created directly, right? So I'm going to do use state as the thing that I want to import, okay? So we're going to use state to hold on to a state variable. So it's not like, it's kind of like a regular variable, but we're going to set it in kind of a different way. So what we do is we get use state from React, and then in the top of our component function, we're going to define a new variable in this way, okay? So we're going to say new, or we're going to say const, and then we're going to say square brackets equals use state. And in the square brackets, we're going to name a variable. So I'm going to call this selected category. Let me actually shorten that. That's like a really long name. I'm going to change it to just category, okay? It'll just be easier. And then I'm going to make another variable, a second one here called set category, okay? So I've got category, and actually we'll change this over here to match, right? So I've got category, and then I have set category. So category is our value. It's going to hold the value that we're using, okay? And set category is a function that lets us change the value for category, okay? We call use state to generate these, and inside the parentheses here, you're going to supply a default value, okay? So let's say our default value is going to be kids. We'll do toys, okay? Actually, so I'm going to pick one of my categories, right? So I'll just call it toys, right? We're just experimenting for now. We're going to actually come back and change this later, but let's put toys there, right? And now if I want to share the category, I'll use this variable. So this variable is holding the string right here. So let's imagine that I want to pass it into the category list. So then I can say category equals, and then I'll put the category variable here. And then maybe I want to set the category on the category list also. So I'll say category equals, and I'll put the value here. Oops, category there, something like that, right? Okay. And so this is my state variable. And then these are two props that I've added now to the category list and the product list, right? So let's work on the product list first. So we want this to filter on the category name, okay? So this is just getting us started. Let me go get the product list here. There it is, right? Okay. And we'll deconstruct again. So I'm going to go to product list and I'll add props here as a parameter, right? And then I'll say const, and I'll get the category from our props. Okay, so now I've got the category here. And now what I want to do is I want to use the category to filter this list, okay? So I have a data.map here. So this is going to return an array of products, right? But it's going to transform them into a bunch of divs and H2s and things like that. But maybe before we transform them, I'm going to put an extra dot here and call filter, okay? So filter takes a function as a parameter, right? So I'll just type the whole function in here. So I got data.filter.map, and then I've got my function here. So my function is going to receive one of the products. So let's call that object, and then it's going to return true if we want to keep that object and false if we decide that that object should not be included. So what we'll do is we'll ask every object, we'll say object dot category. My question is, does that equal the category name that we got from our prop up here, right? So if the category name matches, this statement is true and we're returning true, so we keep that object. And if this statement is false, like category does not match object.category, then this returns a false and we don't keep that element, right? So remember, filter is just going to return an array of these objects, but only the ones where we return true, right? And then with that array, we can call .map, and then we can map that array here. Let's save that and see what happens, right? Oh yeah, there we go. So now I've only got 12 objects, right? So category toys, category toys, category toys, right? Let's try it again. So what if we go over to our app again, right? So here we've got this all set up. What if we go to app and we decide that the category, instead of toys, I just want to do tools, right? So here I have 2 items in the tools category, and there they are. Let's try, what if I did games, right? So let's do games, has 5 items, and then I see the 5, okay? So that's working pretty good, but what we next need to do is to, there's a few more steps to this, right? But this kind of got us started, right? What we want to do is we want to call set category when the category name changes, and that's going to happen when you click on one of the buttons here, okay? And then also I want the selected button to show itself as highlighted based on the name here. So when the name matches, I want that button to look different from the other buttons, right? To show that it's selected. Okay. So let's do a couple things here. So our first thing is, why don't we just show the selected button, and then we'll worry about clicking the buttons. Okay. So let's go into category list, and again, I'm passing the name of the category as a prop. So let's handle that. So I'm going to go to the category list, and here's my category list. Why don't you try it, right? How do you deconstruct the category from props? You can stop the video and give it a try. Okay, so how did you do? So what are we going to do? We're going to put props here, and then we're going to say const category equals props. Okay, great. So now this part's a little tricky, so I'll go over this part, right? So I want the button to look different depending on which category is selected, or if the name of the category is selected, right? So what I'm going to do is inside this map function, I'm going to determine whether I should add a class name here, right? So I'm going to do it this way. If I put class name on here and I say, let's actually do it this way. I'm going to do it as selected like this, right? And then I'll style that class name. So let's set it up so they'll all look selected, and then we'll only put this name on the button that matches this category name, okay? Right, so when we filter through here, we can ask, hey, does object.category match the category name, right? But right now, just for testing, let's just put selected on there, right? And then I'm going to go find the category list CSS, right? And what I'll do is I'll say, how about button.selected, right? And these rules right here come first. So if I write rules down here that that come afterwards, they'll overwrite them, right? So let's try that, right? So what I want to do here is maybe do, let's do background color is, let's make the background, let's kind of invert the background color and the text color, right? So I'll do that, and then we'll do color is 333, right? Okay, that doesn't look too bad. So that's what they'll look like when they're selected, right? But only one can be selected at a time, right? Okay, so we've got this going. So now our next step is to only add this category name or this class name to the selected button, okay? So what we're going to do is, now remember I've got, I'm back in category list.js, and I'm mapping the list of categories, right? I'm mapping them into these buttons. So I have to return the transformed element, right? So that's going to be here. But what I think I'm going to do, pardon me, is add a variable here that has a value that's going to be this name, right? So what I'll do is I'll say, how about, let's call it class name equals, and I'm going to say object dot category question mark. This is kind of like an if-else statement on one line. They call it a ternary operator. So if this category name, I'm going to put the equals here, equals the category that we passed in as a prop, right? So this category, if it matches the category name on the object, or actually I forgot, you know what, this is actually name for us, right? So if it matches the name here, then the value here is going to be selected, okay? Otherwise, colon, the value will be the empty string, okay? So the class name here will either be selected if the name and the category match, or the class name will be the empty string. So if this first part on the left side of the question mark is a true statement, then we get the element after, or the value after the question mark, right? And if this evaluates to false, we're going to get the value after the colon. So now we can take the class name here, and I'm going to put this right here. Okay, so let's see. Oh, look, games is selected, right? So let's try it again. So what if I go to, let's see, let's go get our app here. What if I change to toys, right? So oh yeah, now toys is selected. What if I change to like kids, right? Then you can see kids is selected, right? And then the list matches, right? These are all category kids. Okay, cool. So we're doing pretty good there. Now the last step is to to handle a click on one of the buttons, right? So we want to handle a click on the button and have it change the category. And we're going to do that by calling set category with a new value. So let's actually handle that in the next video. I think we did a lot in this video. So thanks for watching, and then be sure to continue in the next video, okay?